In this video, I will break down how much does it cost to live in Finland as a university student. What's up guys and welcome back to the channel. If this is the first time we're meeting, my name is Oliver and I'm a master's student in economics at Aalto University in Finland. And on this channel we talk about education and early career development, specifically here in Finland. So if you're new here, do consider subscribing. Before we jump into today's topic, let me thank HOAS for sponsoring this video. HOAS, or the Foundation for Student Housing in the Helsinki region, is one of the largest providers of student accommodation in the Helsinki metropolitan area. I've personally been living in their apartments throughout my studies, and I really recommend that you guys apply for their apartments. Links to apply in the description box below. So, how much does it cost to live in Finland as a student? For this video, I've gathered some of the more significant and important expenses that you should at least take into consideration when building your budget prior to moving to Finland. I've also prepared a simple spreadsheet to summarize all of those costs. You can make a copy of this spreadsheet for yourself from the links in the description box below. It's completely free and does not require a sign-in. Anyways, let's get to it. First, we have our selector section. By changing some of these selectors, you will change some of the cost in the spreadsheet depending on what type of apartment you have and which utilities are included in the rent. Second, we have our monthly costs. I've separated these into accommodation, phone and internet subscriptions, food, and transportation. Please note that I have not included expenses like clothing, haircuts, or other miscellaneous stuff because those are fully dependent on your personal living style and are impossible for me to assess. Secondly, we have some annual reoccurring expenses. And third, I've listed a few potential one-off expenses that you might have to take care of. So first up, we have the costs related to accommodation. I've already talked about this in multiple previous videos, but your rent is going to be by far the largest single living expense while you're studying in Finland. Also, as I've mentioned before, getting a student apartment can potentially save you thousands of euros per year, and apartments from the private market can cost up to or even more than double what you would pay for a similar student apartment. In this video, I'm only considering student apartments as the prices for apartments from the private market are impossible to predict even somewhat accurately. So when filling out the spreadsheet, the first thing to do is to choose your preferred apartment type. When selecting an apartment, this selector will automatically adjust the rent for you. And I want to note that these apartments are based on the different apartment types that HOAS has to offer in the Helsinki metropolitan area. Not all providers have exact similar apartments, but they should still give you a good overall picture. Also note that the rents from these apartment types are not fixed. Rather, the actual rent you will pay is based on multiple factors, but most importantly, the location of the building, the size of the apartment, and the age and the condition of the building. The rents in this spreadsheet present the highest possible price you are going to pay for that specific apartment type. However, if you are interested, I have the actual price ranges for each apartment type in the description box below so that you can fiddle about with the numbers as you wish. For the sake of this example, I will choose a studio apartment, which you see tops at 660 euros per month. In the second selector, you can choose whether or not the rent includes an internet connection. This should be mentioned in the apartment ad, so check that out when applying for accommodation. With HOAS apartments, a broadband connection is always included in the rent, so we can check yes. However, I have also added an estimate into the spreadsheet for a 100 megabit internet subscription in the case that you apply for an apartment where internet is not included. In the Helsinki area, this kind of an internet plan is going to be around 24 euros, as you can see here. However, for this example, let's choose that internet is included in the rent. In the third section, you can choose whether or not electricity is included in the rent. In the majority of student apartments, electricity is not included in the rent, and you have to make a deal with an electric company yourself. However, as an exception to the rule, shared HOAS apartments do have electricity included in the rent, so take that into account if you're applying for a room in a shared apartment. In this case, we're living in a studio and we have to make a separate electric plan. The price you can see here is based on a real student-priced electric subscription, but as with everything, the actual cost might vary somewhat depending on your living habits and how much electricity you actually consume. Alright, so next up we can start actually filling the manual information. So first we have our phone subscription. As a student, you can get a discounted phone plan that includes unlimited 4G internet in Finland. This should come at a price of 19 euros 19 cents per month. Next up, we have food. I've divided this into two subcategories, which is student meals and general groceries. As I mentioned in this video, student meals are heavily subsidized by the Finnish government and they are stupidly cheap compared to what you get for the money. You can eat a student lunch once per day, and the restaurants are, in general, only open during weekdays. That means that you should eat a student meal around 25 times per month, and with the average price of 2 euros 60 cents, that should be around 65 euros per month. Next, we have groceries. Food in general, as with almost everything else in Finland, is rather expensive, and I really recommend that you compare prices when visiting grocery stores. The same product can usually be found in multiple different price ranges, depending on the brand and whether or not it is locally produced. The actual monthly cost will surely depend on your personal preferences, but in my experience and based on some actual data that I've collected over the last 3 years, it would be safe to assume that you use around 40 euros per week on groceries, and that would mean 160 euros, give or take, per month. So the last monthly category is transportation. My recommendation is that you use as much public transportation as possible, as it is a cheap and a reliable way to move around. My suggestion is also to avoid using taxis as much as possible, as it is rarely the case that you don't have the option of taking a bus, train, tram, or a metro to get to your destination. Plus, one short taxi ride can easily cost more than what you would pay for your public transportation ticket in a month. In the Helsinki metropolitan area, the price of public transit tickets depends on the zones that you need to move across. If you live inside the two innermost city zones, you can actually get a monthly ticket for 32 euros and 80 cents after using your 45% student discount. The prices go up the further away you live from the center of the city. Alright, so that is actually it for the monthly expenses. Next, let's look at some of the annual reoccurring expenses. As the name indicates, the annual reoccurring costs are expenses that you have to or should at least pay once every year, as long as you are a student in Finland. First up, we have the student union's membership fee that is mandatory for all university students doing a bachelor's or master's degree. However, for students in universities of applied sciences, this is actually optional. The student union membership fees actually change every year, and the overall range is somewhere between 80 to 100 euros, depending on the union. However, for this example, let's use the membership fee for the Aalto University Student Union, which is 91 euros for the 2020-2021 academic year. Second annual fee is your home insurance. While this is actually not technically mandatory, it is extremely highly recommended, as without one, you are personally liable for any damages that you cause to your apartment. Also, no landlord is going to compensate you for any lost or stolen property, so buying an insurance is really a small price to pay for the ease of mind that you actually get with it. Please note that the cost of an insurance depends on multiple different criteria that the insurance companies are actually not even obligated to share to the public. This is also the main reason why it's impossible to find fixed price estimates on the web. However, based on my research and my personal experience dealing with insurance companies, you should be somewhat safe to assume an annual price of 130 euros for a decent-sized student apartment. The third annual reoccurring cost that is fully optional, but which I highly recommend, is an annual student gym membership. I talked more about this topic in this video, but to summarize, private gym memberships in Finland are super expensive, and you can actually save hundreds of euros per year by signing up for your local student gym. For example, living in Helsinki and as a student of Aalto University, you can get an annual gym membership for 147 euros. Alright, so these were all the annual reoccurring expenses. If we actually look at the summary here on the top right, we can now get a good idea of how much money you are going to spend on a monthly and on an annual basis. So finally, let's look at some one-off expenses that you have to take into account either prior or after moving to Finland. First up, when applying for a residence permit to Finland, you should expect to pay 350 euros for the electronic application. For the paper application, that's 450 euros. But note that this only applies to non-European Union or European Economic Area citizens who have to actually apply for a residence permit. Second, you have to pay a security deposit for your apartment. This will vary heavily dependent on whether you have a student apartment or an apartment from the private market. HOAS, for example, has fixed security deposits that are as follows: 250 euros for shared and roomy apartments and 500 euros for all other apartment types. In our example, since we live in a studio, that is going to be 500 euros. So I really want you guys to compare this to the private market options where you may be required to provide up to 1, 2, or even 3 months worth of rent depending on your landlord. As an example, a small studio near the city center in Helsinki can easily have a rent of 1,000 euros per month. This would mean that your deposit could be up to or even over 2,000 euros. Compared to these numbers that we have in the Excel here, applying for a student apartment can save you thousands of euros per year. In the case that you are granted an unfurnished student apartment, which by the way is more likely than getting a furnished one, you should reserve some money for furniture. As I mentioned in this video, no matter which city you live in Finland, there should be options to buy furniture second-hand. However, in this case, let's just assume that you have to make a trip to IKEA to buy a bed, a computer desk, and some other miscellaneous furniture and kitchenware. Of course, you can spend a ton of money in IKEA, but I think 300 euros should at least get you started. Fourth, if you feel like you would like to use a bicycle to move around the city, you can easily find recycled bikes for just a bit over 100 euros. The last time I checked from the Helsinki Recycle Center, 130 euros seemed to be like the median price for a decent bike. Alright, that is actually it. These are the most common expenses that you should take into account. As you can see here on the top right in the summary, the total expenses start to rack up quite quickly. It is good to note that the total annual expenses presented here are way more than what the Finnish Immigration Service deems as sufficient funds for a residence permit. What I'm saying is that you should not think that the 6,720 euros that they require you to have at your disposal would be enough to live comfortably, especially in Helsinki. If you want to learn how to save some money as a student in Finland, please check out this video right here. I do want to reiterate that this has only been an example and your actual living expenses might vary significantly, especially depending on the city that you are studying in, the apartment you will get, and your personal living habits. However, I really hope that this example has given you at least an idea of what kind of things to take into consideration when building your personal budget. Alright, that is all for this video. If you found this video helpful, please do give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend who might have use for this information. Also, if you have anything to ask about this or any other topic related to studying in Finland, please write them down in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'm reading every single one of your comments and I try to answer to every single one of them at a timely fashion. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.